If you're about to hire a virtual assistant, stop and watch this first, because most business owners make the same painful mistake. They think that hiring a VA will save them time, but without the right checklist, it ends up just costing them weeks of onboarding, wasted salaries, and even more stress than before. So here's the truth. It's not hard to hire a VA, but it's really easy to hire the wrong one. And when that happens, you're basically back to square one, managing every single little task and just wondering why it's not getting done right. But it doesn't have to be that way. We've helped over 1,000 business owners at this point build remote teams that actually get stuff done. And in this video, I'm going to give you the exact checklist that we use before hiring any VA. From spotting red flags to making sure you're not setting them up to fail, this list will save you time, money, and your sanity. So let's dive in. Lesson number one is you first need to decide if you actually even need a VA. Are you constantly bogged down by admin tasks that just aren't really growing your business? Or is your work really just starting to leak into your own personal time? The fact of the matter is, if you're overwhelmed and you're spending your time on $10 per hour tasks, you're really just inevitably delaying your growth. As entrepreneurs, we only have so much time in the day. And not only that, we only have so much energy in the day. At the start of the day, assuming you got a good night's sleep, you've got a full battery. But by the end of the day, you're probably drained. Think about all those things that you on a daily basis that are draining your battery and really just sucking your time. You need to ask yourself, what things am I working on right now that are pulling me away from strategy and growth? If you find yourself working on things on a daily basis or weekly basis that are really just repetitive tasks that aren't that hard, maybe you jump into them because you're like, oh, it's just easier if I get it done and just bang it out real quick. Those are likely things that you should have delegated a long time ago. Another symptom of really needing a VA is you don't have a second of spare time throughout the day. It's incredibly important that you, the business owner, has a good amount of time every day, at least an hour or two of just free time for clarity, for deep thought and reflection on what you're working on. You need to spend time thinking about your work and the direction that you're headed. The last thing you want to do is become a business owner that's very reactive to their day-to-day and rarely, if ever, takes the time to reflect on what they're actually building and why they're building it the way that they are. All right, lesson number two is you need to create clarity on what to delegate first. Most business owners lack clarity in probably every single area of their business. But without clarity, we don't really even know where we're going. So the first step in improving any area of your business is to create clarity around what you actually want to accomplish. If you don't have clarity, how do you know where you're going? You can use a matrix like the Eisenhower matrix to help you sort all the tasks that you work on a weekly basis by urgency and importance. I guarantee you, once you go through this exercise, you're going to find out you're working on a lot of stuff that is not urgent and probably a lot of things that are not even that important. After you put together this matrix, you need to identify the biggest time drains that don't actually need you. This exercise is incredibly important to do before hiring a VA because many people will go and hire a VA or maybe someone even in their office without having an idea about what kind of work they're going to give them to do. So if they go into the relationship without clarity, they're really setting themselves up for failure. Now, while you don't want to overanalyze this process and try to map out every single detail of the person's day, you do want to go in at least with a general direction and with general ideas about what they're going to be working on. With most things, I recommend just following the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. So the first thing you want to do is just go and list every single task that you work on in a given week. And then you need to categorize it: admin, ops, marketing, sales, HR. And then from there, try to find the simplest things that are gonna give you the most time back, but really require the least effort to delegate and set up processes for. Just try to get some really quick, easy wins right away. If you're currently doing your sales calls, don't start by delegating the sales calls. That's gonna be a lot more heavy lifting. You're gonna have to go hire someone, you're gonna have to train them, you're gonna have to coach them. It's gonna take a little while for that to get dialed in. Whereas if you're doing some admin work right now or things that are a little bit more simple to delegate, get those quick wins and just get those off your plate first. Lesson number three is you need to source the right type of VA. So not all VAs are going to be the same. People have different personalities, people have different experience, different skill sets, strengths, weaknesses, etc. Some VAs are going to specialize in admin, some in operations, some in creating content. Hiring the wrong person with the wrong skill set or even the wrong attitude can end up creating more work for you, not less. As you're interviewing people and you're curating a short list, you want to shortlist people on their relevant experience, not just general skills. And then also you really want to screen the heck out of them for attitude. Things like coachability are huge. That's one of the biggest attributes that I personally look for when I'm hiring people. The reason this is so important is that once you hire somebody, they're going to need training. I don't care who they are. And you're going to have to spend time interacting with them. Or maybe one of your team members will. But the moral of the story is, if they're not a coachable person, if they're constantly putting up walls of defense mechanisms, and they're just a pain in the butt to work with, it's going to require more time, more energy, and it's going to be really unenjoyable. Now, conversely, if you find someone that's open-minded, they're coachable, they're asking you for feedback, they really just have a mindset of constant and never-ending improvement, it's going to be so much easier to train them. They're going to progress faster. Everyone's going to be more successful. As you're interviewing people, you also need to give test tasks. You need to see what kind of work this person can actually produce before you start working with them. Sometimes people will come to us and they're like, hey, I want to work with this person for 2 or 3 months before I even pay them to test them out. Now, this is completely ridiculous because only an incredibly desperate person is going to work for you for free for 2 to 3 months. I understand why they want to do this. They don't want to invest time and energy and resources into training them and have it not work out. They want to be able to vet this person as much as possible up front. However, this is completely ridiculous and it's not a realistic outcome. So what you should do instead is during the interview process, you give them a series of test tasks to see what their work is like and to get a feel for them. Lesson number 4 is that you need to interview with clear expectations. So this goes back to what I was speaking about earlier in the video about clarity. The more clarity that you can have in all areas of your business, the more confident you will be in making decisions. If you do not have clarity, you don't know where you're going, you don't know what you're doing, you're gonna make wrong decisions, and you ultimately will not have successful outcomes. The more clear you are about your expectations for this person, the more likely they will meet your expectations and perform the way you want them to. Hiring people and managing people and employing people really comes down to relationships. And oftentimes, relationships come down to expectations. You need to understand their expectations of you, and they need to understand your expectations of them. When both parties understand the other party's expectations, it can make the relationship start off on a much better foot, and it'll lead to more success in the long run. If they don't know what you're expecting of them because you don't have clarity about the role or what good performance looks like, and you don't even know what they're expecting of you in terms of employment, well, then good luck to you. When you create clarity before you start interviewing and shortlisting candidates, you're gonna attract better candidates and you'll also avoid miscommunication later on. The top tier VAs out there can spot red flags in employers. For example, if they show up to an interview and you have no idea what the role is, they can tell you're very inexperienced, etc. That's going to set off a red flag for them. Now, if they're interviewing with 6, 7, 8 other different companies, and that's how you show up to the interview, they're likely going to pass because they probably have been burned before in the past by other people who also lacked clarity. No one wants to go into a job and work there for like a month or two, get burned, maybe not even get paid, and then have to go back out and find a new job. So oftentimes when you find the best people, the top talent out there, they're also really interviewing you to a degree. Okay, lesson number 5 is set up at least a simple workflow before you hire the person. I don't recommend just completely winging it, hiring the person, and then just kind of scrambling around the first day trying to set stuff up. Give yourself enough time from when they accept your offer letter until their start date so that you can at least prepare some workflows and get all their logins set up, all that stuff, really just to create a smoother onboarding process. Ideally, in the future, you get to the point where your onboarding process for new hires is just as smooth and just as professional as your onboarding process for your clients. The better impression that you can make on your staff, the more likely they'll be loyal to you, the more likely they'll stick around in the long run, and the more successful outcomes that you'll have. And not only that, but a smoother onboarding process that's already set up is going to get them up to speed and productive way faster and more efficiently. And as I always say, whenever you're training anybody, make sure to record every single training. God forbid they don't work out, at least you have all these training materials produced and you can recycle them for the next hire. Or if it's a role where you're continuously hiring a lot of people over and over and it's a really repetitive role, then these recordings will also be useful for that. What I like to do is I use a tool called Fathom. This is an AI transcriber. So when I get into a meeting, let's say on Google Meet with the person that I'm training, I have the Fathom transcriber in there. It automatically records everything. It transcribes everything. I can feed that into AI later if I want. It also comes up with checklists of to-do lists of things that need to be done after the call. So instead of me having to sit there and like manually type out everything that they need to do after the training, it already has it done. I can copy paste it in an email. I can copy paste it in the Google chat and have them deal with it. It's just really efficient. And then I'll go ahead and save all those recordings in a Google Doc. And in that Google Doc, I'll also type down any relevant notes that are really important for them. And also any links or passwords, logins, stuff like that. Moral of the story, you need to create a standardized onboarding system with standard training videos and standardized documents that you can hand over to someone and they can watch and read all of those and get up to speed without your involvement. A great example of this is I just hired 3 appointment setters recently. I did not have very much of these materials prepared at all, even though I had hired people in the past for this. Now I had some stuff and it was like scattered about, but admittedly, I hadn't hired a ton of appointment setters before. I'd only hired a couple. I didn't have the best training materials already prepared. So usually if I'm gonna hire 2 or 3 people at the same role, I like to hire them at the same time so that I can train them together. The way that it ended up working out was that I actually hired 3 people and they all started on 3 different weeks. This was okay because they were close enough together that I could still train them all together. But the first person I hired, I completely buffed out all the training videos, all of the Google Docs, Loom videos, everything that was needed in order to train her. And then when the second girl started the second week, I just handed her all of those training materials and she was literally trained and up to speed in a day. Whereas with the first person, it took me like 3 or 4 days of some heavy lifting initially to get her trained and up to speed. So as you build out these training materials, you really just get compounded results and you can onboard and train people much quicker with subsequent hires. All right, lesson number 6, you want to start with a trial and then scale. So with any new hire, you don't want to just dump everything on them right away. You need to kind of test out how they're going to do. You need to get a feel for them. Give them some simple tasks to start off with. Remember, keep it simple, stupid. This is also going to lower your overall risk and also help you build some trust. After you assign 1 or 2 simple tasks to them on the first day, you want to keep an eye out for quality, speed, and communication. Hopefully they pick up on those 1 to 2 test tasks pretty quickly. And then from there, you'll build some trust with them. They'll build some confidence. You can add some more tasks onto those. And then over time, you can build out an entire full-time role for the person. All right, so now you've got the full checklist to avoid bad hires and to make sure your next virtual assistant is a true A player. If you want to skip the guesswork and just get a top-tier VA placed for you, we've built remote teams for hundreds and hundreds of business owners, and we can do the same for you. From sourcing to screening to onboarding, we handle the entire process end to end. There's a link below to book a free call to see if it might be a fit. Or if you're still in do-it-yourself mode, check out the video on the screen. It's a rapid-fire breakdown of the most common mistakes that business owners have when hiring. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment down below.